So 6 months ago, I made a video about GDPval, OpenAI's benchmark, which helps us understand the question, can AI take your job? We didn't really know where things were going. We knew that agentic coding was getting better, but over the last 6 months, agentic coding in particular has gotten so much better. GDPval is just one way we can tell in a more systematic way how good AI is getting at doing those tasks that sit underneath ordinary jobs. If you look at artificial analysis and their benchmark here, you will see a leaderboard, and this leaderboard effectively tells us how good the model is at completing all of these example tasks compared to a human baseline. We can see that the export control restricted Claude Fable 5 is currently winning with an index of 1769, and down the bottom is open source GPT and Solar Pro 3. You can look at this and see that there's a lot of competition in this space. And then when you realize that 6 months ago, ChatGPT 5.2 was getting nowhere near the numbers that some of these models are putting up, you can start to update how you think about, will AI take my job? Or what tasks can AI replace in my job? There's something which I want to call out, and that's that GLM 5.2 Max, which came out just last week, is an open source Chinese model. And on this evaluation, it's the third top performer, ahead of ChatGPT 5.5. Sitting just behind it is Minimax M3. Since I recorded that original video 6 months ago, the enormous improvement in the capability of the Chinese open source models, especially around work-related tasks, production of work product, like slides, research reports, agentic coding, has improved in leaps and bounds. This race between the US and China is very close. And if you just think for a moment about what this means, when a lot of these models are open source, it means that the capability to roll this out in your business and deploy AI agents to help you do things better, faster, and cheaper in your workplace is going to get easier and easier over time. If you look at the cost per task, you can see the trade-off between frontier models in the US and Chinese models. The Anthropic models are extremely expensive per task. The open source models are extremely cheap. If you're a business person, you care about how much efficiency you get out of each dollar spent. And when you think about the complexity of some of these GDPval tasks, and you realize that you can get output that is just as good for vastly lower cost per task, how is that going to inform your thinking about how many tasks you want human experts doing and how many tasks you want AI agents doing? This also helps you think about the distribution of, in your AI first operating model, which model does what. More simple tasks might get pushed down to much cheaper open source models, and only the most critical, only the most complex will be reserved for the Anthropic or the OpenAI model. If you're still wondering what sort of things this benchmark is evaluating, on artificial analysis they show you. They have a task prompt. You are the AV and in-ear monitor tech for a nationally touring band. This prompt goes through with all of the different requirements that the band has, and then it asks the AI tool to put together a visual stage plot to help, I guess, with the planning and prep. So what does Claude Fable 5 look like? Okay, this is it here. It's got the input list, the output list, the tech notes, and the stage. What does Gemini 3.1 preview look? Okay, it definitely looks worse. Can you see where this is going? Each model has its own capability level. How about GPT 5.5 XI? Well, that's much better than the Gemini one, but not as good as the Claude Fable one. How about Grok 4.3? All right, but look how it does things like clipping over here, and the logos are very small and unreadable. Llama 4 Maverick, a really old open source model, that's what you get. And GLM 5.2, that's what you get. It's got the input list, the output list, but as you can see, the graphics aren't really there yet. This is what the GDPval set is. If we go over to look on Hugging Face, we can see that this benchmark is evaluating all of these different tasks. So there's a sector, there's an occupation, there's a prompt, there are reference files, there are deliverables that are expected, and there's a rubric, like a marking guide for what do we want this prompt to actually do for us. If I look at an example, let's have a look at editor. You're an editor at a well-regarded science magazine. Match the Guardian style guide. It needs to have an opinion and it must be backed up with fact-check reporting. And then over here you can see the marking rubric which is looking at what it actually needs to do so that systematically, when you run all of these tasks against a model, you are getting that scoring mechanism. Quantitatively get to these numbers over here. Now, these example tasks are not as simple as some people think. In a lot of job categories, one of the things that OpenAI did in their research is they looked at 44 occupations across the top 9 sectors contributing to US GDP. And then they constructed these tasks to represent the work of industry professionals. So all of these tasks in here aren't just AI generated slop. What they are is work that has referenced industry professionals to help figure out what these marking rubrics actually should look like. So that when you have a systematic answer of, oh yeah, the model scored X, that is helping people understand, is this output better than or worse than a human? These metrics, these benchmarks, all of this is what I think is one of the more important benchmarks that is out there, because what we know is that over time, all of this leaderboard is getting higher and higher ELO or rankings. There's a lot of competition and diversity, and the gaps between models are decreasing over time as performance of the models increases. So that question I asked at the start, can AI take your job? I think isn't exactly the right way to ask it. You might want to ask yourself, can AI do tasks in my job? What we know from benchmarks like this and our own testing is there are increasingly more and more tasks of increasing levels of complexity that AI can do just fine. And these benchmarks, this way of thinking about what can AI do and how do we assess it, is really important, especially when we think about the cost efficiency of all of this. And that's where that business decision around how do I solve a problem? Do I solve this problem by paying an expert, or do I solve this problem by paying an expert to use AI, or do I solve this problem by paying an AI API endpoint just to do it for me from this prompt? Just do that every day for me, and that's that task done. And over time, where is this sort of job loss or AI can do my job thing going to come from? Well, it's going to come from more and more bundles of tasks being pushed to AI agents. You've seen this already this year with the explosion of interest in personal agents like OpenClaw and Hermes. But what GDPval does is it's going up that economic complexity ladder. If you look at some of the sectors in here and the jobs that are involved, there are a lot of different occupations. So here's a lawyer one. So you're a lawyer who's got a client. There's a potential transaction, draft a legal memo. All of this stuff sucked a few years ago, but now you can build up systematic scoring rubrics like this. So for this legal memo, there's a lawyer who's helped to put together this rubric to judge the output of the AI tool. And it's saying all these little things that lawyers would care about in evaluating the output. And there are all these little fish hooks. So like there's some legal case here that needs to be included in the memo to be able to assess or advise on this case. And all of this stuff is increasing the scoring if the model figures it out. It's super interesting to me that people push back on things like this when you can look at the evidence sitting under these benchmarks and just think for yourself. Like, you're smart enough to go off and look at the evidence. You can then map it up to your own experience using the tools to build things and do things. And when I think about what I spoke about 6 months ago, was I right? Like, models are definitely getting better. More tasks are able to be completed. Agentic coding tools are getting better. And experiments and testing are definitely generating new insights. And if I think about some of the problems that we have back in December 2025, I think that I got some of these predictions right. And I'm glad that I've been putting these videos up and recording what I'm thinking, because to my mind, this is one of the biggest economic transformations that is going to happen in human history since the Industrial Revolution, and it's happening at 10 times the speed. So if you think that this isn't happening, just look at one benchmark. Artificial analysis is really good. They have another benchmark, which I think we should talk about today, and that's the Briefcase benchmark, which they call the Agentic Knowledge Work benchmark. So it's a private evaluation they've developed for frontier agentic capability and long horizon knowledge work, testing agents on realistic business workflows. And if we look at this one, it's a bit deeper and more complex than the GDPval one. But if we look at the Briefcase ELO, you can see here the capability is similar in distribution to the GDPval one. But what sort of tasks are on this? Well, look at this. We have let's go with the market model. So, market model, Claude Fable 5, compare to 5 high. We can essentially look at the task brief. So, build an Excel workbook modeling the NZ egg market. What do we have? Well, on the scoring summary, 83% Fable 5, 42% X 5.5 high, but what does it actually look like? Audit this model. Conduct a detailed audit of this workbook. Assess its overall quality and accuracy. And I'm just going to let that cook off over in the background. And if we look at this chart here, this is where I think a lot of people are starting to see the trade-offs. So there's benchmarks rising and intelligence is getting higher. There's also some cost implications. So if you look at the cost, you can see that down here the open source is very cheap, but the performance is not good. Up here, the Claude Fable output is extremely good, but it's extremely expensive. And this sort of sweet spot over here with the open source models is it's so cheap for the given performance that this might be somewhere where a lot of companies end up landing. When you actually look at what it's done, that is looking pretty good. Look how nicely formatted that is. Maybe it's not Wall Street level, but it's better than nothing. What I'm going to go back and do though is find my models and look at the final output. So you can see here there's this output here, and that's what the Fable gives you. And then if you look at X 5 high, it gives you this. So it's not as good, but a lot of the data's in there. And if you look at GLM 5.2, well, that is a wall of text. That is detailed. Whether it's accurate or not, we don't know yet, but look at that, it's doing it. And then look at 03. For Opus. Look at that. That's like 18 months ago. So Anthropic's gone from that to this in 18 months. Just on that gap between this and that. The question I want to ask you is, imagine if that was your junior analyst 12 months ago, and they used to put together work product like this. And now they're putting work product like this together. How stoked would you be as a manager? You'd be pretty happy. And what you need to appreciate is the cost of doing this is cheaper than labor costs. Because as part of producing this, you can put tests and quality controls in place to get what you need each time. And that's the real shift in this whole can AI take my job thing. It's not just about delegating work to a person. It's if you delegate work to an agentic workflow and you've got all the standard technology controls sitting around that, you can do things much cheaper and at a higher level of quality. Every time you fix one of the bugs or issues, you're improving quality, you can do it systematically, you can track all of the stuff and get all the prompts so that everything's repeatable. That is something you cannot easily do today or really do at all with people, unless they're very expert and highly paid and highly skilled. So anyone who wants to pay gets access to the ability to start doing that. And that's a real step shift. Like if we go back here, it hasn't found any errors so far. It's still working through the reports, but just so you know, these add-ins are, I think, one of the best things that OpenAI and Anthropic have shipped. So you can do really good sanity checking of other output through it. And it can do a lot of the boring Excel grunt work that you previously had to do manually, like check formulas and all this sort of thing. Does it still make mistakes? Yes. Do you need to still check key outputs and stuff yourself? Trace formulas? Yes. But leverage. Why? Just while I'm recording this video, it's doing an audit of this worksheet for us. And I can talk to you about this and focus on this in the background. This leverage, this doing 2 things at once, 3 things at once, 4 things at once. That's another thing which around this, will AI replace my job, people aren't getting quite yet. If you have a manager who has a team of direct reports, they can just have multiple agents working on things or sub-agents working on things. Over time, this is where I think that job loss might come from. It's the consolidation of who is doing the task. So you have a really skilled, well-paid expert who can drive all of these tools and lots of agents running up tens of thousands of dollars a month in AI token spend. What does GPT audit say? Overall, B+. The model is well structured, source heavy, a few high priority external validation and calibration items remain. You've seen how we can do a parallel ChatGPT Excel audit in parallel with recording this video and talking about these benchmarks. But to recap, what we're seeing with all of these benchmarks, this one, the AI briefcase one, and this one, the GDPval one, is that, like I talked about 6 months ago, AI capability is getting better, faster, not necessarily cheaper aside from the open source models, constantly. And if you want to be thinking about how to reinvent and improve your operating model to get leverage out of these tools, that's something I write about in my Substack newsletter. The link to subscribe is in the description below. I also write about AI risk and societal response issues as well in another Substack. If you like this, like and subscribe, drop a comment below. Do you think that from your own use and your own testing of these tools, AI is getting better? Or do you think this is all just hype? I'm really interested, especially if you have dug into the details of some of these benchmarks over on Hugging Face and something like that. Do you think that there are other benchmarks which need to be added? Or do you think that there are particular skills which AI is just never going to get to? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.